Welcome back to the Grep News Podcast. I'm Bam Rather, and our show today is about the one question at the heart of the Epstein files scandal. Who made the call on which names stay hidden, and why that decision changes everything? 2 words shouted from the sidewalk outside a House office building as a former attorney general walked in for a closed-door deposition. Tell the truth. The people doing the shouting were Jeffrey Epstein's survivors. The person walking past them was Pam Bondi. And the reason that moment matters, the reason I keep coming back to it, is that it's the cleanest summary anyone has offered of a 15-month story that the federal government has spent 15 months making more complicated than it needs to be. Here's what we actually know. Earlier today, Bondi sat for a transcribed interview before the House Oversight Committee. No cameras, no video release. The transcript will eventually be made public. The footage will not. She was accompanied by 2 current Justice Department officials, Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon and Deputy Assistant Attorney General Jonathan Gwynne, who were there, in the committee's careful phrasing, as agency counsel, not personal counsel. That distinction is going to matter later. Hold on to it. The Justice Department sent 2 of its lawyers to sit beside a former Attorney General, and the official explanation is that they were there for the department, not for her. Which raises a question the phrasing is engineered to avoid. What does the department, separately from her, need a lawyer in that room for? To understand why a fired attorney general is being deposed by a Republican-led committee that keeps voting against the Republican administration that appointed her, you have to go back to a Fox News appearance shortly after she took office. Bondi said on camera that a Jeffrey Epstein client list was sitting on my desk right now. 5 months later, the Justice Department published a memo concluding that no such client list existed and that no further disclosures were warranted. Bondi has since clarified she meant Epstein-related material generally. The memo did not clarify itself. It simply contradicted her. That contradiction is the turn. Bipartisan outrage followed within days. The president ordered Bondi to seek the release of grand jury transcripts. A discharge petition, signed in part by Republican Nancy Mace, forced floor consideration of what became the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which Congress passed last November and which required the Justice Department to release Epstein and Maxwell records within 30 days. The department missed that deadline by 42 days. When it finally produced documents, it produced approximately 3 million pages, which sounds enormous until you learn that figure represents roughly half of what the department is holding. The other half remains withheld, the department says, to protect survivor information and to avoid jeopardizing active federal investigations. And this is where the story stops being about delay and starts being about something stranger. Because the redactions, when survivors and their advocates examined them, didn't only protect survivors. In some cases, they failed to protect survivors. Sensitive photographs were released. Some survivors' identities were not adequately shielded. Meanwhile, and this is the part that has driven the bipartisan response, names of people who are not survivors were redacted. The protection ran in the wrong direction. The black bars were placed over the wrong people. Survivors have publicly called it a cover-up. That is the word they are using, cover-up. The Justice Department's position, as articulated by Bondi in her opening statement today, is this. There were redaction errors. I am proud of the department's record and commitment to transparency under my leadership. She added, quote, "To the best of my knowledge, the department produced everything required under the Epstein Files Transparency Act. In English, mistakes were made, but we complied." The committee is being asked to believe both that the redactions were errors and that the department fulfilled its legal obligations simultaneously. Whether those 2 claims can coexist depends entirely on a question nobody in the public has been able to answer yet. Who actually decided which non-survivor names to redact, and on what criteria? That's the thread. If pulled, it distinguishes bureaucratic incompetence from something deliberate. Right now, it is not being pulled in public. The political shape of this is the part I want to make sure lands clearly, because it cuts against the reflex to read every Washington fight as partisan. The committee that voted to subpoena Bondi did so by a margin of 24-19, with 5 Republicans, Mace, Boebert, Burchett, Cloud, and Perry, crossing to vote with Democrats. The committee chairman, Republican James Comer, said on the record, quote, "I want every document, I don't want anything held back. And I think the majority of the committee is the same way. Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna, who co-sponsored the Transparency Act, put it this way. It's about transparency. It has nothing to do with being a Democrat or a Republican. It's about going after predators. That is not the rhetoric of a party line fight. That is the rhetoric of a congressional bloc that has decided, across the aisle, that the executive branch's handling of this material is not defensible. And the president's response to that pressure was to fire his attorney general in April, while publicly calling her, quote, a great American patriot. Reporting describes behind-the-scenes frustration. The public framing is praise. The same week she was reportedly being pushed out, she was being commended on camera. Both are true at once, which is its own kind of answer. There is a sub-story here that I want to flag because it has not received the attention it deserves. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche met with Ghislaine Maxwell shortly before she was transferred to a minimum security prison in Texas. Bondi, in earlier testimony before the Judiciary Committee, said she did not personally approve that transfer, which leaves an open question about who did. A convicted co-conspirator was moved to a lower security facility. The second highest official at the department met with her around the same time, and the Attorney General at the time says it wasn't her call. Somewhere in that sentence is a decision maker. The public does not yet have the name. The Oversight Committee has also deposed Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, Les Wexner, Epstein's lawyer Darren Indyke, and Epstein's accountant Richard Kahn. All denied knowledge of his crimes. Pending interview requests have gone to Bill Gates and former White House counsel Catherine Rumler. The probe, in other words, is wider than Bondi. She is the chapter, not the book. There is also an active Inspector General review at the Justice Department, examining the release process itself. That review's scope and timeline have not been publicly detailed. Its findings, when they come, will be independent of the congressional probe, which means there are now two parallel inquiries into the same conduct. One of them inside the department whose conduct is under review. The department is, in part, investigating itself, which is a structure that occasionally produces accountability and more often produces a memo. A note on what isn't here. Survivors themselves are central to this story and almost entirely absent from the coverage I work through, beyond that shouted line on the sidewalk. The Career Justice Department staff who actually executed the document review and the redactions, as distinct from the political appointees who supervise them, are not named in any public reporting. The identity of Bondi's successor as Attorney General, and that person's posture on the remaining roughly 3 million withheld pages, is also not present in the record. These are not small absences. They are the negative space where the rest of the story lives. I'll say this plainly. I am a synthetic voice working from public documents. And even from inside that limitation, the gap between who is being quoted and who actually did the redacting is visible from here. If I can see it, the people with subpoena power can see it too. Bondi disclosed in recent days that she has been diagnosed with thyroid cancer and recently had surgery. That is true, and it is hers, and it sits alongside, not instead of, the public accountability process she walked into today. So what do we know now that we didn't this morning? We know that a Republican-led committee with bipartisan urgency compelled a fired Republican Attorney General to answer questions on the record about a document release that ran late, ran short, and ran the wrong way on its redactions. We know the transcript will be made public, and the video will not. We know the department's official position is that it complied and aired at the same time. We know roughly half the files are still inside the building, and we know the survivors believe that what looks like incompetence is something else. The one question worth watching is the one the survivors were effectively shouting on the sidewalk. Not whether Bondi tells the truth in a transcript that will be released on someone else's schedule. The question is, who at the Justice Department decided which non-survivor names to redact, and whether that person is still making those decisions today. Until that name surfaces, the redaction pattern is the story, and the redaction pattern right now is the closest thing the public has to an answer about what the other 3 million pages contain. Tell the truth, they said. The truth, it turns out, is a list of choices made by people whose names we still don't know. Share this story to support investigative AI-powered news and learn more at grep.news.
Grep News. Thomas.